He's an amazing performer, but he's never been the guy.
Acknowledge me!
What is going on, guys? It's Drex, and I have a special guest doing a tier ranking video, which is so surprising, but I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm Ron Bonda John, and Drex and we've known each other for a few months now, and both really dig wrestling, so he kind of talked me into doing one of these tier lists with him. This is the first time I've ever done a tier list, I think.
Well, we had to add a couple people on here, and
Mhm.
we're going to explain what each tier is, and for first, Ron actually came up with these names, make it a little interesting with wrestling, and I'll let him explain why he chose these certain tiers.
Absolutely. So, World Champ is going to be like the greatest of all time. Those are the wrestlers who didn't just define a generation, but like are still like when you talk about the Mount Rushmore of wrestling, they're the names that come up the most. IC is right underneath that, where it's like this was an incredible wrestler and still did a lot of amazing stuff, but maybe it isn't that main guy of his era. Right below that is Money in the Bank winner. So a really good wrestler who was maybe more of a mid card person. Maybe they had one run with a world championship. Maybe they never had a world championship. And then down below them is mid, and that's to say someone who maybe just wasn't the best, or maybe not everything clicked. There isn't a trash tier, there isn't a shouldn't have competed tier, and that's because wrestling is really hard. And if anyone makes it in wrestling, even if they were just in WWE for a day, they had a lot more talent than I did. They had a lot more talent than a lot of people did, and they put their body through a whole lot more than most people do too. So we're going to show a little bit of respect to these guys because it's all just good fun.
It is, and they're all great wrestlers. And guess what? Some things, like Ron said, didn't click, or per se, they're better people than us that got to a higher profession than we ever would in the industry. And remember, it is all scripted, but it's based on the WWE universe and how they reacted with them as a heel or face. But let's get it started. So we got about 32 to 34 people on here. And there's one person that repeats, and we'll get to that later. But the
Mhm.
first person that we have on here is Mr. Bye Bye, you know what, that said it to Logan Paul, the one and only Seth Rollins. So
Mhm.
I'll let you take over and let you say what you have to say about Mr. Seth Rollins.
Oh no, you're handing me a gun, and it's my job not to put a bullet in it right now. Seth Rollins is an incredible performer, and there was a period of like 2 years where he was the most must see wrestler in the world. It would have coincided with WrestleMania 31. I'm going to make the argument that he's IC champ. He's an amazing performer, but he's never been the guy. There's always been another person who was the top dog before he was, be it Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes. The product would not be the same without him. You need him there. He's a crucial part of the machine, but he has never been the absolute top of it.
Are you kidding me, Ron? Are you kidding me?
This is the exact reason why I didn't want to
No,
go
no, no.
first.
Oh my god, bro. Like, if there was an in between, I would put him there just because I want to put him in world champ because look what he's been doing since COVID. He's just as up there as Roman is. Yes, he had his in between with freaking being the Messiah and all that, but look, he's turned a world championship that they just brought back from the big gold to now the world heavyweight championship that Triple H brought back. He had a lot of things to do. He was a Vince guy, but he been mainly a Triple H guy. And I believe that he should be a world champ because he has what 4 or 5 world championships under his belt, and he is such a great person on the mic and as a wrestler. But some injuries have stopped him from that, which kind of I believe is why you put him in IC.
It's that, and like I said, it's not a knock against him. It's not a knock against his creative, even though his creative has not always been the best. It really is much more. I don't think the machine of WWE, the machine has never fully gotten behind him as being the main guy. But at the same time, I see what you're saying. The fact that he has been world champion so much, the fact that he is always in that stratosphere. Okay, I would argue he would be towards the tail end of world champ.
Okay. Okay. No, I don't think there really is a ranking for putting it in order or anything. So I want to
Mm.
put him world champ. If you agree, we can put him there.
Yeah, let's put him there.
Okay. To get that out of the way, he's my one of my favorites of all time. 100%. 100%. Love Seth. Even
Mm.
since WrestleMania 31, as you mentioned, that was one of the best cash-ins ever.
Mm.
So, but the next we got the Indian Giant, Mr. the Great Khali. So I'm gonna start with this one. We're gonna go back and forth. And me, I would put him as Money in the Bank winner. Like he had his own thing with Vince. He had his own thing with people. He was not the best wrestler. He wasn't great on the mic either. He was sort of carried a lot just by his size and just using him as a big piece or a big guy piece, and that's really much it. That's what I believe. But you can say what you want.
I agree with you for different reasons. I would also put him above the top tier, and it's be or above the bottom tier. He may not have been the best wrestler. Um, there's people out there I've seen who have like complained about him being a bad promo, but English is very much a second language for him. He speaks better English than I can speak basically any other language. Um, and the thing that I think is important is India is one of like the biggest markets for wrestling, and there's a lot of great performers who are coming out of India right now. There's a lot of wrestling schools being set up in India. Like that's going to be the next great hotbed of wrestling. I think is going to be in India.
Really?
And the great Khali, even if you don't like him as a performer, the work he's done there to help set up a lot of those schools and help set up a lot of those inroads for Indian
Mm-hmm.
wrestlers.
Yeah.
Like India's a subcontinent. This one guy basically became the pathway for an entire subcontinent of people to start finding work in more promotions around the world. So you can't take that from him or his legacy.
Now I'm seeing that, and I think now that they're going out to like Saudi more often, they might even bring shows to India. You never know, you might see a PLE in India.
There was going to be an NXT India before the pandemic, and then I don't think they ever went
Oh,
back to that. But that they were going kind of like how they did NXT UK. They were going to do a whole separate NXT for India because of how many wrestlers are coming from there now.
interesting, interesting. I
Yeah.
never would have thought of that. Well, Great Khali, we got through you, but here is Ron's favorite person, his goat. I'll let
Yep.
him do it here. I already kind of know where this is going, but Ron, talk about your man Bret the Hitman Hart. You talked about him on my podcast, but I'll let you talk about it on YouTube.
Absolutely. Well, he's the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. During the worst period of wrestling ever, that being in '95, going through the New Gen era, he was the consummate professional. He was willing to work with anyone. He worked with bad creative, but made it work. And when he was given good opponents and good creative, he was the best there possibly could be. He is one of the most grounded and realistic wrestlers of all time. He's one of the most understated and relatable characters of all time. Out of Because pro wrestling is such a larger than life industry,
Mm-hmm.
Bret Hart feels like the most human out of all the performers. And it's not just because we know so much about his life and his upbringing. It's also because Bret Hart's personality
Mm-hmm.
is that of like the cool old guy that you like bump into in your neighborhood. He is just endlessly good and inspiring. And I very much am of the opinion he is the greatest wrestler of all time. He may not be the best speaker, but he spoke with authority. He spoke with intention. And by the way, when he became face in Canada, or no, face to the rest of the world, Hill in America, towards the end of his WWE run, he became a great promo. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that goes back to when you give him good creative, he is the best.
Okay. Well, I haven't really watched older wrestling, like say early 90s or late 80s when say Bret the Hitman Hart was there, but I've heard great things and Ron spoke heavenly on him, literally. And he was a great wrestler from what I've heard. He's got a lot of action figures. It speaks for it because he was a top person in the business, and that's why he has his own name and has a name everywhere because it could be even a household name. Talk about if you're talking about wrestling or asking, say, family members, talking to elderly people or like people that used to watch wrestling near the 90s or around that era, they always know Bret the Hitman Hart. So I would agree with you. So world champ,
I think he has to be.
even though he wasn't much of a world champ in the industry, he was a great mid card title holder, 100%. So I'm gonna switch back. We're gonna go with the King of Kings, Mr. COO, Mr. Papa H, Mr. Uh the King of Kings, Triple H. I'm gonna say just what he's doing with creative right now. He started in NXT. He's 14-time world champ. I have to put him at world champ. He is literally everything in WWE now. He took over for Vince, and I'm so happy because I was getting so bored of wrestling. I couldn't keep up with it each week because it was the same old, and I just wasn't liking the Vince guys that he was having on there. And Triple H is bringing in so much new talent. I'm so thankful that the storylines that he's producing with Bruce Richard or Bruce Richard, whatever his name is. If I said it wrong, I'm sorry. You can blaze me in the comments, but I gotta put him in world champ. His career has explained so much of what he's done, and he has made the content of wrestling worldwide and on social media is crazy. You never know his next move. But I want to hear what you want to say, Ron.
Oh, okay. So you're looking at him as a creative guy, and as a creative guy, as a booker, as a writer, regardless of what you want to call that, I agree. The thing is, as a wrestler, when I was growing up, it was the early 2000s, and I remember when everybody and their mom hated the fact that Triple H was wrestling again tonight. Um, there's all the bad stories, him burying Kane, him burying Booker T, the endless promos that would go on for like an hour, the way in which he spoke, and the bad DX reunions. Um,
I know what you're
and he's
talking
a great
about.
wrestler. He was an amazing wrestler in the 90s. He was an amazing wrestler in the early 2000s. But then he had those really bad injuries, his quad tears.
Yep.
And with each quad tear, he had to slow down a little bit more and become a little bit more methodical. And then towards the end of his career, he was still doing like 40-minute matches at WrestleMania. He had that really, really bad match with Roman at what was that, WrestleMania 32?
And
Uh,
Batista. It
oh yeah,
was
yeah.
horrible. No, but
That was,
I'm morally talking about during him in his prime in the 90s and 2000s. I'm not talking about past 2010.
I get that, but I feel like you have to acknowledge that too because that was like a solid 15 years of Triple H.
That's true.
I would argue we should put him in IC.
Ah, you're killing me.
I would
You're
argue
killing
because
me.
his prime, where he was the best ever, right? That's like from 96, 97 to like 2001. So that's what would that be? That'd be 4 years. And you look from 2002 until 2016, a much longer period of time in which he did actively drive people away from WWE. I think we have to take the good and the bad,
Hmm.
and I think good and the bad. Triple H is still one of the best. He's still way up there, but he was not the guy.
Yeah. Oh, you're killing me. You're killing me.
I was willing to compromise with Seth. I'm gonna stick my feet in the dirt here. I'm digging my heels into the soil and saying he should be IC.
All right, then I'll put him at IC. 1 second. All right, and we have our next person, which is Mr. Rob Van Dam. I'll let you go with this one.
I am still of the opinion Rob Van Dam is the greatest ECW wrestler. He is one of my absolute favorites of all time. He's on my Mount Rushmore. I think that there's no one who is as athletic and technically gifted in quite the way RVD is.
Mm-hmm.
He is exciting and he is poppy and he is great. I think that he's probably money in the bank because he can be all those things. And I can still love him, but he was never ECW world champion. He's the longest running TV champ, but he was never world champ in ECW. He became WWE champ for a little bit. He was EC champion in WWE for a little bit. Lost both of those belts due
Mm-hmm.
to the drug bust. He was TNA champion, but no one was watching TNA at that point. I love him, and I'm so happy he's still around. I'm happy that he seems to still love wrestling. I adore seeing him. But I'm not going to try to make the argument that he was the biggest guy or the biggest name at any point.
I would agree with you. He was a great person. He had a great pop for the audience. He was a WWE Universe guy. And the whole drug thing, yeah, I agree with because I saw that happen. And he used to, I love that we still get to see Rob Van Dam here and there. And that's great to see. And you never know, he could pop in and just do something with the WWE and help again. But I don't think he will. He's doing his own thing now, doing the shows, going to Comic Con, signing stuff. So I would agree with you, Money in the Bank winner. He was one of the best ECW wrestlers of all time, which you said.
Yep.
So, but we got Mr. You Just Made the List, or as you would call him, Break the Walls Down, or the Prodigy when he first came into WWE, or now as he is Mr. Fozzy, or Mr. now in AEW. What do you think of Chris Jericho? Drink it in, man.
You gotta make me go first on the okay. Mid.
I agree. I'll let you talk.
Okay, you're the only person in the world who agrees with me. I want you to know that.
Really?
Everyone adores Chris Jericho and talks about how great he is. He's not the best on the mic. He never has been.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the best wrestler.
I agree.
And he never has been. Everyone talks about the great WCW cruiserweight division, and it was great. I'm wearing the shirt of Eddie Guerrero. But you see the matches in which he was going up against an Eddie Guerrero or a Dean Malenko, or I don't like invoking his name, but a Chris Benoit. And Jericho was never, and he was never the personality that a Shawn Michaels was or an Eddie Guerrero was.
Yep.
And nowadays he's in AEW and he sucks the life out of every room he's in. The air goes stale when he walks through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the internet crowd still love him. I think people are nostalgic for him. I think that he's done good stuff. I loved the list of Jericho, and I loved his dynamic with Kevin Owens.
Oh,
That's
me too.
One entire career I liked him.
Interesting. Yeah, I love the whole list thing too. I actually saw him. Do you remember the Survivor Series, like the before one? It was Raw versus SmackDown when he was doing the list with AJ Styles and all that stuff, and he was telling people you just made the list. I think it was Goldberg versus somebody else too, but I was at that Raw because it was in Buffalo, 2016. Oh my God, I was crying because of how funny that whole gimmick was for almost a year with him, and he wasn't even getting a title shot really. It was so good, but I agree with putting him mid, 100%. But let me know what you guys think about Chris Jericho or even any of these people. Let me know in the comments below.
Oh, they're gonna hunt us down for that one.
You're gonna laugh at me, but I want the next person I really want to put right with Chris Jericho, and it's because he is the big man who is an actor now and is in AEW as well, and that is Mr. Big Show. What do you got to say about this guy?
Big Show breaks my heart because he seems like the nicest guy, and he is legitimately so talented at so many things. He's an unbelievably athletic big man, but he's gone through WCW, he went through WWF, and now he's in AEW, and it feels like no company knows how to use him. And do you want to know how you should use him? Guys, he is 7 foot tall and can do a drop kick. That's all you need. But no, instead we have the meme of him constantly going heel face. And they wasted him. They've always wasted him when he could have been the next Andre the Giant. So, unfortunately, I agree with you because I do think he's really good.
I agree, too. He is a great actor in his show, literally about him. And I was so happy to see that. And I was always a big fan of him when he was face because of the things he do, like the athletic big guy who's always here to help. And then when he turned heel and doing the thing with the Authority, they just started wasting him. And they could have done so much with him with being a mid. He was a world champ, once, per se. He was more of just a mid card person. You could even put him in Money in the Bank winner, but it's just with what they've done recently with Big Show, you got to put him at mid.
Yep.
But Mr. Whoa, dun, dun, what do you got to say about Ric Flair, Ron?
I mean, on one hand, he's the 16 world champ, and you'll never find a bad Ric Flair match. And I do love him as a character. And you read his backstory, and he is a sympathetic figure, to say the very least.
Hmm.
But I think there's also a component where you need to factor in, have you damaged the reputation of wrestling? And I'd argue that due to recent events and recent, what's what I'm looking for, controversies,
Hmm.
he has damaged the public perception of wrestling even slightly. So I do think that mires him. And also, I do think it's worth pointing out, when he wasn't in the NWA, he was never the main guy. Even when he was the champion in the WWF, it was to eventually get the belt back to Hogan in a very convoluted way. And then after that, it was to get the belt on Bret Hart.
Yeah.
Um, I would argue that Ric Flair, that many say he's the greatest wrestler of all time. And if you're of that opinion, I can totally understand. I'd argue he should be right next to his boy Triple H. And
I 100% agree with you. And what perceived my mind to where I wasn't like the biggest fan of Ric Flair is because of the movie The Iron Claw. Literally my favorite movie of all time. And how they perceived him in that movie, like it could have been a little better, but like it's just I didn't, like I said, I haven't watched wrestling in the 80s. That's when he was in his prime, going into the early 90s, and they were going back and forth, like Ron said, with the story wise with him. And they kind of you overused him, would be the right word. Would you say, Ron?
yeah, I think that's fair to say.
So, and that's why I think I'm going to agree with Ron and put him in IC champ. Like, he could be the greatest wrestler of all time, but you'll see who my goats are come later in this list.
Yeah.
But Mr. establishing himself in the world of wrestling in the 2000s, but came to WWE in 2016, Mr. AJ Styles, the phenomenal one. What makes him so phenomenal to you, Ron? And where are we going to put him?
AJ wrestles a style that literally no one else in the world has. He was the first one to really bring over a lot of the Japanese style,
Mm-hmm.
TNA. Um, he is a wrestler who he's had bad matches,
Mm-hmm.
but he has good chemistry with almost anyone you put him up with. Um, I do think there was a point specifically in 2016 where you could say he was the greatest in the world. And he's still one of the greatest in the world. And it's clear that WWE trusts him. They have him as always a safety mainstay. He's great. He's from North Georgia, which is like big points for me. It's like I literally am just like a county over from where he was born. Um, I argue though he should also be next to Triple H and Ric Flair because he's not the guy. He's a great guy to have. He's an amazing guy, but he's not the guy.
He's a supporting character. He's not the main character. I get what you're saying. No, I would agree too. Like he's done a lot overseas in Japan and Europe, and when he came to WWE, he was a big hit. But in the recent years, like you could say the Undertaker and him match was but story wise it was great. It was cinematic, but
Mm-hmm.
like as of the past year, what is Triple H doing with him? Because I think it just houses a Vince guy. So I think in the recent years, just because of what they're doing to him, I have to agree with you in putting him in IC champ.
Yeah.
So, but do you know who this man is wearing the NWO shirt?
I mean, there's only one man it could be. That's Big Daddy Cool.
Yes, sir. So, tell your backstory and where you want to put him, and then I'll let you know what I think.
I I love this. Every time I might have a controversial pick,
No,
you
because I
make
want to
me.
hear what you say. Because
Uh,
that's what I believe that I think people would agree with is I'm gonna put my input. Like I know a
yeah.
lot of the current wrestlers, and you know about a lot of the older wrestlers, so I'm gonna let you do that. So I'm gonna get the newer guys, you get the older guys, and then I can put my input.
So, unfortunately, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time is not on the list, and that's Scott Hall. And Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, they together saved the wrestling industry in a lot of ways. They were big in the New Gen era. Kevin Nash was Diesel, and
Mm-hmm.
Razor Ramon, Scott Hall. Razor Ramon was, other than Bret Hart, the most popular babyface, and there were points where he was probably more popular than even Bret. And he had the most runs with the IC championship belt up until that point. He was a revolutionary character. And as for Diesel, he was similar, but then he had a really bad reign as Diesel, mostly because Vince McMahon tried to turn him into like the ultimate nice guy, like Hulk Hogan 2.0. But then the two pop over to WCW, and
Hmm.
they form the Outsiders. That eventually begets the NWO. And even though the
Yeah.
NWO would go downhill, they were the biggest thing ever when
Oh
they
yeah.
came out. To the point where they took WCW, that was always a distant second to WWE, and turned it into the biggest wrestling promotion in the world for 2 years. It would be like if Pepsi was suddenly now not just bigger than Coke, but was so much bigger than Coke that there were rumors that Coke was going to go out of business and Pepsi was going to buy them out. And it's one of those unthinkable things, but it could have happened. And there's a lot of people who like to claim credit for it. Hulk Hogan likes to claim credit for it. Eric Bischoff likes to claim credit for it. I'm telling you now, it's Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. I would argue it's more Scott Hall than Kevin Nash,
Hmm.
but I think Kevin Nash is up there, and for that reason, I think he needs to be world champion.
Okay, I would
Yeah.
agree with you. NWO is literally one of my top five. Um, what the no factions. And while you were talking there, I went over and got my NWO trio bundle of Funko Pop that you actually gifted to me. Thank you, Ron. I had to show it. I loved NWO. Love their theme song. Love what they did, and the whole thing in WrestleMania 31 when they came out. That was great. That was great.
Mm.
I loved how that connection came together. And Mr. Diesel, whatever you want to call him, Big Daddy Cool, he definitely helped the industry and definitely helped factions become a thing once they created the NWO.
Mm-hmm.
So I would agree with you. Even though I wasn't the biggest fan of him when he was heel, but like besides the NWO, love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't like this guy. I'm gonna put him right where he should be in mid, and it's Alberto Del Rio. I've
Uh,
always hated him. He's a heel. He
yeah.
was a decent wrestler, I would say, and it's just why he left WWE and what he did, his actions outside of WWE is the reason why I don't like him. I could not like his personality at all. But Ron, I'll let you talk what you want to talk about.
In wrestling, his peak was he was the poor man's version of the $1 Million Man.
Mm-hmm.
Out of wrestling, he seems like a bit of a scumbag.
Yep,
He's
I
never
agree.
showed a lot of companies that could have really used the help, and he damaged their reputation. Yeah, I don't have any time for Alberto Del Rio or whatever he wants to call himself nowadays.
Love it, love it, because he's one of the most hated people I have on this list.
Yep.
But Mr. Glass Breaking, Mr. What? Mr. One Bear, what? Two beers, what? Three beers. The one of my goats, love of all time, best on the mic, one of the best on the mic ever. But there's somebody else that is as well on this list. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna already put him there. I gotta put him at world champ. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And my reasoning is one of the best wrestlers, literally the best on the mic, only person who would give shit to Vince McMahon, and literally would make so many good stories. I wish he could have been at Mania last year. There's a whole scenario where he was supposed to be at Mania instead of Undertaker, but things fell through. But he's been training, and you never know. We might get a match with him at Mania this year because he's in great shape. But he has had so many injuries, which has sucked, and he could have had another 5 years of wrestling. But based off that neck injury, kind of like Biggie, it cut his freaking his career short. But I'll let you talk about Mr. What?
I don't think there's really anything I could say that's not already been said. I mean, he is the biggest merchandise mover of all time. I argue he is the biggest star in wrestling ever. I don't think that the orange orangutan we're going to talk about in a minute holds a candle to Stone Cold as a character, as a performer, or as a draw. Stone Cold Steve Austin is one of my absolute favorites, and my favorite match of all time is his match with Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13. I can't do anything but praise Stone Cold.
I need to watch that, Ron. You got to give me a whole list on matches I need to watch with people before 2004.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay, bet. But yeah, we needed to put Mr. Pooh Beer smashing the guy. I want to recreate doing that just with Stone Cold. This literally what Pat McAfee did at I think it was WrestleMania 37 in Dallas with smashing beers with him and then getting stunned. That was great. Great. But, all right. Moving on from one of the best of all time, we're going to one of the weirdest character arcs there ever has been. He's not even been used much recently, and that's Mr. Baron Corbin. Mr. Tough Enough, Mr. Winner, whatever you want to call him. He was great in NXT, but um, I put him in Money in the Bank winner because he actually has won a Money in the Bank. He's won a couple mid-card championships, and I don't think he's ever going to be a world champ, and I don't think he's ever going to be in the Hall of Fame, but he is a person to think of because he's had so many different character arcs, like Mr. Broke Man, and then he wins, like, say he's Mr. Jackpot winner from Vegas kind of deal with the money and everything with JBL. That was a fail. But I liked him in his Lone Wolf days, even though he was kind of a heel and his heel-ish character was he was a great wrestler. But let me know what you think if you agree with putting him in Money in the Bank and then explain.
I think that makes a lot of sense. He is an unbelievably entertaining guy. He's never been the guy. And for some reason, WWE at one point tried to say that the reason their ratings were bad was because of him, despite the fact that if you're a commissioner character, you're not actually calling the shots.
Exactly.
But he's a super fun character, and he seems like a cool guy, and I always like seeing him pop up. So I think absolutely he is very much at home next to a Rob Van Dam.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Mr. Unmasked, Mr. Mayor, you would say.
Yeah.
Kane Unmasked, or Glenn Jacobs, as you want to call him. Where do you want to put him? You know more of this character than I do, and I'll let you deal with both Kanes because there's this version and then there's a Kane version with the mask.
Yep. So the Kane is the wrestler that we put two of on this list because there is two different eras of Kane, and it can be pretty cleanly cut between pre-mask taking off and post unmasking. Unmasked Kane just sucked.
You want to put him mid?
Yeah, I think he's mid. He's slow, and he was always all over the TVs, and he never had good storylines. And Glenn Jacobs, like, I don't know. And then there was the Saudi match where it was him and Taker versus the DX. And, again, I don't want to get too mired in, like, current things, but if you damage the reputation of wrestling, I think that's something to consider. He is an outspoken person about his views, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes being outspoken can make you seem rather off-putting. And I think that he has been off-putting to a lot of potential wrestling people. So in that way, I think, yes, at least modern Glenn Jacobs should probably be in mid.
I agree. And the only good, like, unmasked thing that I liked about Glenn Jacobs or Kane, whatever you want to call him, was the whole thing with him and Daniel Bryan with the yes, no, and the counseling stuff. That was so funny. I loved that. But I think that's literally the only highlight I'd say that was good because him not masked with Taker was horrible. Horrible.
There's one more highlight. It's in the Saudi match.
Oh no.
How often they couldn't get it back on. The match where you have four men, and the one that wrestles the best is the one that's been retired for 10 years. And Sean, it's the moment the mask falls off, the camera cuts to Sean, and you can see him realize, oh my god, I'm going to have to carry this match because these assholes can't move anymore.
Oh my god.
That's the best post-unmasked Kane moment. I'll die on that hill.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think this is another GOAT, like you mentioned earlier. You mentioned his name. Mr. Let me tell you something, brother. Mr. Big Guns, Mr. WWF. I believe he's in world champ because of what he did when WWE or WWF first started and was on TV. And he really carried the business, and he's been one of the top of the guys. And you always, if you know wrestling or an older person that you know knows wrestling, they know Hogan. So let me know what you think. We can be between IC or world champ, but I feel like he should be in world champ.
I think he should be in Money in the Bank. Because here's the thing, right?
No way. Come on.
Hear me out. Hogan kickstarted the two biggest periods of wrestling ever. He kicked off the Rock and Wrestling era, and then he kicked off the Attitude Era.
Oh yeah.
At the same time, a lot of the things he did in WCW led to its death, and he held a lot of guys down. And he did foster a very unsafe and very dangerous and very hostile work environment for a bunch of people in the second biggest company. There's no reason why WCW shouldn't be alive right now. And a big reason for it is because of Hulk Hogan. And then you get to the modern era, and it's like he had a good second run in WWE, but then he completely tarnished the reputation that TNA had built up, nearly killed
Mm-hmm.
that company. And again, I'm going to go back to this thing. If you damage the reputation of wrestling, that is bad. Well, 2016, his sex tape came out, and he said some colorful words, and that made everyone
Oh
say
yep.
wrestling's racist. And then he barely gets back from that controversy and is apparently very rude to the New Day and other people backstage. Um, and he then shows up and lets some more of his personal opinions out.
Hmm.
And then to try to cover that up, because that's its own controversy in 2024, he also then tries to compare himself to Chris Benoit and has a really bad take on the Chris Benoit tragedy in 2024,
Oh, you
which
talking
was
about
not
the Logan
my
Paul podcast?
what?
He talks about that on the Logan Paul podcast. I don't know if it's about that, but he's on his podcast talking about wrestling and all sorts of stuff like that. But
I think he's done it a couple times now where he basically said it doesn't really matter what I do because wrestling fans will forgive anything. I mean, they all forgave Chris Benoit, and it's like, who has forgiven Chris Benoit? I want you to name one.
not
Hogan,
not us
please name
two.
one.
Not us two. All right. Well, I believe he should be an IC champ. Now that
That's
I'm
fair.
thinking about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna get in the middle here.
Okay. Well, you got Mr. Dean Ambrose, Mr. Psycho, or if you want to call him by his actual name, Mr. John Moxley. I believe he should be an IC champ. He's kind of carrying AEW right now with everything that he's doing, and like I was very sad to see him go because he was with the Shield. He didn't do too much in NXT, but him on the current roster, he was so crazy. Great face, but he could be a great heel at the same time. So I believe he should be an IC champ.
I think he should be an IC champ. There's a part of me that wants to make an argument that he should be in world champ, but I think you're right because he's always been a highlight, but he's never been the guy. So I think he's
Exactly. Okay. That's all you got to say about John?
other than that. When he was in the Shield, he was my favorite member, and when the Shield broke up, he was still my favorite guy, and he's the whole reason I even started watching AEW is because I love John Moxley.
And the reason
Um,
why I was gonna say my favorite was Seth and the Shield. Come on. But when he
right.
went as a singles wrestler, I loved him on the mic. Him between him and Kevin Owens, it's just how physical he would be. He was the crazy guy during the 2010s era, the PG era, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But hold on, we got the best in the world, and I'm gonna let you talk about him, even though he made his return this year. But I'll let you talk about him. I have my own thoughts, but give me a second. I will be right back. You can talk about the best in the world, Mr. CM Punk.
Boy, where to start with CM Punk? Well, he's an amazing wrestler, and he is an amazing character, and the Summer of Punk is what's kickstarted a lot of the modern stuff we all love. And if it wasn't for CM Punk, Daniel Bryan probably doesn't get his Mania moment. And there's probably no AJ Styles given to his level that he's at now. I think it's fair to say that CM Punk kickstarted like a great age of wrestling. And I'd also say he had a great storyline in AEW. He had great matches, and I loved his story of the like older gunman now trying to still prove that he has enough fire in him to keep going. He hurt the reputation of AEW. At the same time, yes, what he did at the Scrum was inappropriate. Tony Khan was right there. And first thing about being a leader, if you see that, you need to work it out. And if it gets to the point where it's looking bad and you were right there, that's on you. Alongside
Mm-hmm.
that, it's kind of wrong what they did with him with the Jake Hagar situation. Not Jake Hagar, the Luke Perry situation. That's not even his name either. The Jungle Boy
Jungle
situation.
Boy, there you go. Yeah, we talked about
Yeah,
that on my podcast as well.
yeah. I would argue CM Punk should be world champ because I think
Yep,
there's no doubt that everything we love in wrestling right now, in some way, shape, or form, it comes from the acorn that was the Summer of Punk.
I agree. I agree, and I'm so happy that everybody was sort of thinking that he was coming back, and then he does at freaking Survivor Series last year.
Yep.
Literally, as soon as the show was about to cut off, oh my god! And only a couple people knew about it. Made me flip, and I had to buy a CM Punk when I went to a wrestling show recently, and I just showed them my shirt. And actually, Ron just gifted me an old CM Punk with this cross arm logo of a necklace I'm gonna be wearing whenever soon. But I definitely agree. He's got to be at world champ. The amount of story that he has built as a character since, say, before he left, and is bringing it into now with him and frickin' Drew to have a rivalry that intense
Mhm.
because of certain past events, and you can stretch it out. That shows that how good those two are as characters and as pushing part of creative, which Triple H is letting certain characters do that, which I'm so happy that they're doing because I usually don't like rivalries that are happening probably at say only probably two matches after, or like say within a month's time. This is what 4 months of them just going back and forth because literally this started at the Royal Rumble and now it's what almost close to Royal Rumble again in like 3 months, 4 months, 3.5 months, 4 months. It's just 8 months of all this happening, and now they're fighting, and now they're about to fight in Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood. It's crazy the
Mhm.
amount of stuff that they're doing. And Punk, he's one of the best on the mic. I agree with Stone Cold on the mic, The Rock, which we'll get into because he is on this list as well. But Punk literally will tell you how it is. He's just a guy that literally is literally the blue collar wrestler. And
Mhm.
he's a decent wrestler, but you gotta love him on a mic and his personality. Literally called a personality. It's right in
Yep.
his theme song. So
Mhm.
that's just what I think, and I agree that he should be world champ. But we got one of the best high flyers in wrestling of all time. He is a Hall of Famer. He is the dad of Mr. Dominic Dirty Dom Mysterio, Rey Mysterio. Let me know your thoughts.
He is an inspiration to a lot of people, not just smaller wrestlers, but also I think this goes like kind of understated. Him and Eddie Guerrero was massive in terms of being kind of a gateway figure for a lot of Hispanic fans. Um, and I think that, you're seeing so much more interest in lucha in Mexico, as well as just more Mexican Americans or Hispanic individuals in general becoming wrestlers because of Ray. He did not have the best world title runs either time, but I do think he should be world champ because if John Cena was the 1A of WWE good guys, Rey Mysterio was the 1B. He was the second biggest merchandise pusher. He was the second biggest star. We did kind of sour on him, but then he came back and he was better than ever. He is probably right now the best he's ever been, which is insane because he's been wrestling since the 90s. And in the 90s, he was also one of the best in the world. So just the fact that he's just been getting continuously better that entire time is insane.
So you say IC champ?
I think world champ.
I really want to put him at IC champ, and my reasoning is, yes, he has been a world champ. He has led and helped a lot of people build their careers. It's just he hasn't been, like we've said, the main guy. So that's why I believe he should be IC champ, even though he wasn't that like face of the company or close to it. He has helped a lot of people, but he's like Triple H in that situation of where he's had his bad matches, he's had his bad times as of recently. He's really not doing much on the mic. It's literally between him and Dom, and it's going downhill.
Okay. No, I get what your argument is. All right.
So
I I,
that's why
I
I'm
can handle.
putting IC champ.
Yep.
Well, the final boss, or Mr. Moana, Or what's his name in Moana? I forgot.
Maui.
Maui. Mr. Maui, that's what I meant. Or Mr. Horrible Black Adam. Whatever you want to call him, the final boss, The Rock. I have to put him world champ. My reasoning is I grew up on him in the 2000s, 2010s. Not really at the beginning of his career, but literally he is one of the people to where hard worker, wakes up at 4 a.m., helping everybody, has brands. He's literally everywhere. I would say he's one of the greatest of all time. Say he's not wrestling, but still, he's doing everything outside of the business. He's now head of TK, one of the people at TKO. He is literally helping run this company without him really sort of being in it. But when he is, it's literally reaching peaks. It's everything. And he has done so much for this company, and he has not done a bad thing to this company, I believe, and that's why I think he is one of the greatest of all time. Great on the mic, you'll laugh. Great heel, great face. Whatever you need him to do, he will do. But let me see what you think. I love The Rock. Let me hear what you think, Ron.
I mean, The Rock is the one person I can say they became bigger than wrestling.
Yep.
Everyone, they never became bigger than wrestling. To the point where they kind of started detracting from wrestling. The Rock is bigger than wrestling.
Yeah.
He's the biggest star in the world, and he's used that to do a lot of good and also to put a lot of eyes back on wrestling. So absolutely, I think he'll be world champ.
I was gonna say something, but I don't want to be rude. As soon as after I started saying stuff, I was like, "It doesn't matter." No, I'm kidding. I was going to, but I didn't want to do that. That's heel Rock, and I'm not heel Drex, so whatever.
You're not heel Drex.
No. But well, you got Mr. WrestleMania. He is in AEW now, and he is the AEW World Champ. What do you think about Daniel Bryan?
Just like CM Punk, I don't think wrestling as it exists right now happens without Daniel Bryan. I think that he was kind of the first of that new wave, but I think he was in his own way, like very much a trendsetter and a path breaker. And I think he should also be world champ. I could make the argument, well, he was never the main guy, but when you've inspired so many people and so many people have gone and had great careers because of you and the path you set, absolutely you should be world champ.
I would see if there was an in between tier. I would put him there. You want to know why? I would say because what did he do outside of wrestling? His name wasn't really outside of wrestling.
Yeah, but I think that in terms of the positive effect he's had within the business,
that's true.
I think that can't be understated.
And he wasn't really a bad guy in the business at all. The only time I really didn't like him was literally in the last couple of years he was in WWE. He really wasn't. He had the whole thing with the title where he's turning it recyclable. What the hell is even that? Like, bro, no. I liked him in his beginning part, WrestleMania 30.
Yeah.
That was his peak.
Yeah.
But I just feel like he's IC champ, but just to, like what he's done inside the business at the beginning of his career and winning titles and all that stuff, he's got to be there. But he's at the way end of world champ. He's not like near the top where the guys are. But another guy moved to AEW, but he is the rated R, Mr. Superstar, Edge. What do you got to say? Or where are you going to put him?
Edge is one of those guys that I think everyone takes for granted. Because you never hear people talk about how great Edge is, and yet you go back and you watch, and he was so good on the mic, he was so good in storylines. He took some of the worst creative ever and made it iconic somehow. Because he did. He got some horrible stuff during like 2005, 2006. But he made it work. Kind of, he succeeded in spite of WWE's best efforts. And I think as a result, I think he should be world champ because he has more belts than anyone else in WWE history. Not more world titles, but more belts. He was always an important part of the show. He always gave back to the business. He is still a great character and a great performer all these years later. And at the end of the day, there's been so many innovations that have come because of him. First Money in the Bank winner. Him and Christian won both of the first two TLC matches.
Yep,
Um, he gave The Undertaker probably his best feud ever.
I
I
agree.
love the Undertaker feud. Yeah.
No, everything you said, I totally agree with. And look, he's still even current. And look at what he's doing. It's just crazy. Him and what sucked was the one injury that literally caused him to retire. And he came back from it, and look what he was doing. I'm just mad that he didn't win a world title in the past couple of years before he went to AEW.
I actually respect him more because of that, because it would have been so easy for him to throw his name around and get that belt. But I think he knew it was more
Yeah,
important for him to like make other stars.
I agree, and I think that's what he's doing in AEW. Like he'll win a couple belts here and there, and he's just trying to make people better than he was, kind of thing.
Mm.
But he was the innovator of the wrestling industry.
Yep.
Well, my favorite of all time. Met him, shook his hand. One of the best people in the world. Won't have kids, which he should because of him and his personality. Mr. You can't see him, John Cena. Next year is gonna be tough for me, dude. I'm gonna be crying, and I'm even trying to not cry right now because his last year of wrestling is coming up, and
Mm-hmm.
you gotta say I have to put him literally at the top of this list because of
Yep.
the things he's done. He's bigger than wrestling. Literally the voice of Honda card, freaking ads,
Yep.
Peacemaker in
Yep.
some random comedy movies,
Yep.
and
He was,
he's just like The Rock. He's everywhere.
yep.
Like who else is doing that?
It's really just, I mean, Batista. But yeah, it's like those are the three. Those are the three guys who went from wrestling and started being like amazing actors on top of that.
I agree. It's just he's literally everywhere. He's done everything. The most kind person, literally what you want to be in a man or as a man, is Cena. 100%.
Mm.
Just his storyline. He's literally one of the best people with the kids. 100%.
Mm.
And it's just, yeah, he might not have great figures or anything. His figure in wrestling and his where he came from, and basically from Thugonomics Cena to literally one of the best characters there is, and he's still continuing to do the same character. Who's doing it that long? Nobody.
No one. You have to go to like Sting.
Yeah,
You have to go to
exactly.
like the yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Well, I'm not gonna try and get loud here, but the Beast Incarnate, Brock Lesnar. I really want him to come back and face Braun. That is one of the dream matches I want between those two. But I really want to put him at world champ. Would you? I'll let you say your reasoning, but where do you think he should go?
Like him or dislike him, and I admit I kind of more dislike him. I think he has to be world champ because for the past 15 years he was synonymous with the world title.
He was.
So yeah, he has to be there. Like I know we call Rock the final boss. The Rock doesn't feel like the final boss. Brock Lesnar feels like the final boss.
Because of what Vince literally made him, which is crazy.
Yep.
And as of recent with Brock, with him and Cody, literally that had made me respect him so much. And when he's not a heel, his face is literally so funny. You would never expect that from Brock because literally Paul Heyman was his guy, and now he's with Roman. But like, I want Brock to do his own thing, but like now he's just dealing with his kids. He's more of a father and a family guy, and it's kind of sucks that we're not seeing him much in the business. Which hopefully they put him in creative soon, just to have and just put other guys over, but also get like say the Intercontinental Championship, have him a Grand Slam champ. Just random funny things that they could do in creative to make Brock just a little bit more before he retires.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my thoughts on him. I used to hate him, but I love him now. So yeah. But we got Mr. Mask Kane. I'll let you take over with this one. This is your guy.
So Mr. Mass Kane, original Kane, best Kane, was the coolest thing ever. It doesn't matter if you were a kid, if you were an adult, if you were a diehard, if you were casual, if you knew what wrestling was, you liked Kane. Because he is a simple gimmick. He's a horror movie monster. He beats everyone, And even if he loses, he'll just pop back up like Michael Myers. He has the best Royal Rumble performance ever, in my opinion, which is the 2001 Rumble. And he's just incredible. He had a 1 day title reign. I'm pretty sure he was the first person to beat Stone Cold for his first belt. And then that was
Wow.
the high rated moment in Raw's history ever, was their rematch the next night. People will tell you it was Mankind Rock, This Is Your Life. That's a lie. Don't listen to those people. Those people listen to Vince.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, no, go back and look at the Nielsen ratings. The actual top rated moment in Raw history is Stone Cold Kane. That rematch.
Hmm.
So I think for that reason, Kane has to at the very least be
IC champ.
IC,
I think
and
that's
I
where I'm
think
gonna
that
put him.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like the things that he's done, and he's literally, Braun put it little at best. He is your monster that you would have from a horror movie or say in a book or whatever, animated show. He's the scary SOB. Like I used to
yep,
be scared of Kane when I was younger, and then once I started getting older, I started liking him. And him with Undertaker, the Brothers of Destruction, was great.
yeah.
So I agree, and that's why I'm gonna put him IC champ. Like he wasn't the main guy. That's what we're relying on to for people for world champ.
Mm-hmm.
But Mister, you suck. You suck. Where would you put Mister Kurt Angle? Mister Perk Angle was, oh,
Oh, yeah.
great. I'm thinking IC champ because of what he did. I did not like him as a manager, and that's why I couldn't put him at world champ. But just his character in the 2000s and what he did in WCW and WWF a little bit, and then WWE.
I think that he should be world champ, and the reason I say that is he's a legit gold medal Olympian, as he'll have you know, and he came to wrestling, and that gives wrestling an unbelievable amount of prestige to have an actual Olympic wrestler in their midst. But he was also incredible. He is one of the funniest wrestlers ever. He is so good as a heel. He is so good as a face. He was the reason to watch TNA for a long time, where he was their world champion for like I think he's still their longest reigning world champ. Um, I think Kurt should be world champ.
Really want to put him a high IC champ.
I'm willing to take high IC champ for Kurt. Because
Okay.
I'll also note he was never the guy in WWF.
Okay, so that's where I'm gonna put him. High and
All
IC
right.
champ. But this one's got to be world champ, 100%. Mister, he hears voices in his head. '09 Randy, one of the best heels in history, where he
Mm.
won a couple world titles. He literally did not give a shit about anything or anyone. He would punt people. He would RKO people. He literally would do RKO. It's just anything, anybody. He has to be at world champ, and he's so close to beating. I think he might tie Cena for the world titles because he's got what, another 5 years he said to wrestle.
Yeah, and I think he's really just two away. I think if he gets one more, he's tied with Rick and John. If he gets two more, he has the most.
Exactly, and it's his career. He's literally doing the thing with Cody Rhodes right now, but him versus Cody, that is gonna be history. I'm gonna love that because of the thing that they built together in the 2010, correct?
Mm-hmm.
With how he
Yeah.
had him and Ted DiBiase. Yeah, he's just
No,
a
not like.
great. Yeah, it is
No, that
legacy.
was like. I'm getting Legacy and Evolution confused.
Yeah, no, it's just
Yeah.
what they did, and he's literally put so many people over. Gunther, one of them recently. Cody.
Yep.
It's just how much he's learned in a face of this business. Like he's not outside of wrestling much, but if you know wrestling, you know Randy Orton. Mister putting his
Yep.
arms up, doing his thing. That man has
Yep.
just so much aura, and he could be so funny too.
Mm-hmm.
He's just one of those people who could be heel or face.
Yep.
But any other words for Mister Voices in his head?
Like Edge, everyone took Randy Orton for granted. I feel like just in these past few years, people started realizing how good Edge and Randy Orton and John Cena always were.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a legitimate case to be made. Randy Orton might be the greatest wrestler of all time.
I would put that up there.
Yeah, like in terms of how he wrestles, because he's not dangerous. and he doesn't always put on the best matches,
Mm-hmm.
but there's always logic to his matches, and his good matches are amazing, and his
Exactly.
worst matches are
Mid.
meh. Yeah, and it's like if your worst is a 5, but your average is an 8, then you're doing pretty good.
Exactly. And he's good on the mic as well,
Mm-hmm.
which is just puts that a little bit more to where he's an 8 or 8.5. But
Yeah.
where would you go with the animal?
Mm.
For me, I grew up on Mr. Batista, and now he's doing stuff outside of wrestling, and he's doing his own thing, which I'm happy for him. But near the ending of his career, I just couldn't stand him as much, and I want to put him at IC champ.
I get what you're saying. What I'd point out is even though he had a couple of bad return matches, he has cultivated a massive career for himself and has done that to bolster wrestling and its reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And during his time, there wasn't anyone like Batista. He was completely his own guy, and he had a great, unique feel and look. He had a personality not like anyone else, and there was something special about him. Like we talk about the OVW graduating class that was John Cena, Batista,
Yep.
Randy Orton, and Brock Lesnar. All 4 came from the same class,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like Batista, other than Brock, he was the one that had the most aura, and he used that to catapult himself. I think, especially for the goodwill he has brought to wrestling, he should be world champ.
But he's so right there, right next to Rick and Triple H.
Yeah, but his classmates are just above, and Randy Orton is in world champ.
That's true. All right, I'm gonna put him before, right before Brett because of what he has done to the company and what he's brought outside of the company to the company.
That's fair.
So that's what I'm thinking. Roddy Piper. I want to put him at IC champ, but I'll let you try to inspire me to put him where else. But unless you agree with me.
The reason WWE becomes a success is because of WrestleMania. WrestleMania 1, the biggest gamble Vince ever took with his company. So much so that he had to refinance his house to put it on. It was the biggest hit they could have hoped for, and it put WWE on the map. The thing is, why was WrestleMania 1 a success? Well, Hulk Hogan was a star, and he was buddies with Mr. T. It's because Roddy Piper kicked Cyndi Lauper in the head, and it's because he had such animosity with Mr. T. Roddy Piper talked people into the building, and he may have never been a world champ in real life, but there is no doubt the reason Hulkamania became so big, the reason Hulkamania ran wild, and the reason WrestleMania succeeded, and the reason WWF was able to begin the national expansion, it wasn't just on the back of Hulk Hogan. It is very much the fact that Roddy Piper was there being the Lex Luthor to Hulk Hogan's Superman. And he
Hmm.
was so good in that role that he became one of the most beloved people of all time. And unlike Hulk Hogan, even today his reputation is positive, and the reputation of the wrestling industry through him is positive. I think he has to be world champ.
I put him at the rear end with Diesel though,
I think that's fair.
because yeah, he did push start to WWF and WWE and WrestleMania as itself. So I would agree. Like his name's not as recent, but like what he did during the beginnings of WWE really put him into where he should be world champ.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you're gonna agree with me, but I have to put the dead man, Mr. 22 and 1, where he should have been undefeated, Undertaker at world champ, and he has to be right next to Batista. He
Yeah,
is literally one of the most iconic people in WWE history. If you know WWE, even through the 90s to the current day, he's been literally through almost all the WrestleManias that there has been. You know of Undertaker.
mm-hmm.
And now he's just a back part of the company to where he's helping with creative and everything, and he's always willing to help people put them over. That's exactly what a company that does wrestling or whatever. If you're presenting yourself and you're helping out in any way that possible that you can, that's Undertaker. And that's why I love him inside and out of wrestling. So that's why he has to be world champ.
No, absolutely, I agree. I think that he definitely should be world champ. He is like probably the single most well-known character in wrestling, at least from WWE. And there's not really a crossword to say about him.
There's no bad word to say about him.
Yeah,
But Mr. 3 to 4 personalities. You mentioned his name earlier, Mick Foley.
hmm
Where are we gonna put him? I'm believing IC champ, but I'm gonna let you see what your reasoning is.
I think he should be IC champ because he was never the guy, but he undoubtedly added to the show in such a tremendous way.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things you could go into, moments and characters. You could go into the King of the King of the Ring, Cellfall. You can go into his death match as Cactus Jack against Terry Funk. You can go into the greatest promos of all time he gave in ECW, talking about Dewey Foley. Um, but I don't think you really need any of that. I think literally all you need to know is if you had a Mount Rushmore of the Attitude Era, the biggest era in wrestling ever, yes, Stone Cold was the biggest star.
Mm-hmm.
There's an argument to be made that Mick Foley was the biggest star either after The Rock or potentially on the same level as The Rock.
Yeah, because those two were having a lot of rivalries during that time. Yeah, I agree. All right. The shirt I'm wearing. Put your one up, Ron. You gotta
Okay.
respect your Roman Reigns, our tribal chief, the only tribal chief, or the original tribal chief. I gotta put him a world champ, literally right up with his cousin. And I cannot wait for hopefully they put that as the main event next year because of this whole bloodline thing. Literally the only family to have so many people in this industry and making such a good storyline for
Mhm.
to put a person up next that we're going to talk about. He's just done so much and has carried this new era of wrestling since COVID, even with him dealing with his own cancer. Like, yeah, he was a part timer during the time that he was champ, but look what's gonna happen in the future. Now he's gonna be a most sort of a full timer, part timer, full timer ish. But what he's done in the ring, he has built himself up since literally the start of NXT. And has been one of the people that you see everywhere in wrestling in the past 10 years, and he is just one of the guys. And he is, I would say, him and a couple other people are the face of the company, and he's so
Mhm.
good on the mic now. He's just one of my favorites. If there's merchandise of him, a figurine or whatever, I'm getting it. I'm such a big fan of Roman and have been since literally the Shield.
Absolutely, and I think he's probably the proof in the pudding that you might hate on someone, but a lot of times they're in that position for a reason, and they just need to be given the
Mm-hmm.
tools. Roman was never a great good guy when they were trying to force that, but then he he circumvented that to becoming the centerpiece of possibly the greatest storyline in modern wrestling.
Yep.
Like there's nothing that comes close to the Bloodline story.
No. No. He is one of my goats. 100%. He's just one of the guys and is the guy. Like yes, he had to put over Cody, but he's just one of the best people in wrestling, and he's starting to go outside of wrestling, which he's following his cousin's path. But it's just what he's done and who he is great. I love it. Well, is this man a sexy boy, or is he throwing up X's because he was part of DX? Well, you got the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. What are you thinking about him?
I think he has to be world champ.
I
Um,
agree.
to many people, greatest wrestler of all time. I'm inclined to believe he's one of. I would not put him in front of Brett. Don't see what you're doing, Drex.
Okay, okay, okay.
Over on me. I don't think he was as good as Brett, but that doesn't change the fact that a lot of people thinks he was better than Brett. And at the end of the day, he was such a good performer. He was he was so good that factions could spawn around him and not be too good, but it was okay because he was still there. I'm thinking about the NWO rerun. In all honesty, I'm thinking about a lot of versions of DX, where
Hmm.
basically they were relying on Sean being really funny and naturally likable. Um, and yeah, he is just. There's a reason he's called Mr. WrestleMania. There's a reason he's called the
Yep.
Showstopper. It's because he is possibly the greatest wrestler of all time.
Yep. And he's held all those. And look what he's doing with NXT now. He's literally doing what Triple H is doing. He's following him. Which is crazy that we're putting Triple H at top of IC champ when he is a bigger person than Shawn Michaels and he's in world champ.
I would argue that Sean, his entire career, though, like there's no touching how consistently good he was.
That's true. He was a better wrestler than Triple H, 100%.
Yeah.
So now I see what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
yeah. He is the sexy boy. Not now, but he was. He was all those nicknames, 100%. Well, you got Mr. Dusty Rhodes, Mr. Polka Dots, Mr. Father of the American Nightmare. I'm
Yep.
going to let you talk about him because he is one of your favorites, and I've just grown to the fact of what you've told me about Dusty because you're more of an older wrestling fan than I am of a current wrestling fan.
So Dusty Rhodes, I mean, what is there to possibly say? If you like wrestling, you owe a debt of gratitude to Dusty Rhodes. The idea of the closed circuit show, the big show, the pay-per-view, that was
Mm-hmm.
him. He made Starcade. If you like war games, that was him. That was his stipulation. If you like the Four Horsemen, that was him. He booked that. If you liked the Midnight Express or any like great tag team of the 80s and 90s, a lot of them existed because either he got them a job or he made tag team wrestling so popular that other companies had to start building tag team divisions. And the biggest praise I can give Dusty Rhodes, he was a wrestler in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. Unfortunately, he passed away in the 2010s. You have four, possibly five generations of wrestlers where if you ask them who gave you good advice or who was your mentor, they say Dusty Rhodes. And it's not one type of wrestler. Everyone from a Bret Hart to a
Seth,
Rick to a Seth to a Roman Reigns to
Randy.
a Miles, Randy Orton. Like, there's a reason why he was
Yo.
essentially the finishing touches of NXT. When you were ready to go to the main roster, you started learning under his sitting tree. He might not have been the best wrestler, but his personality and his creativity and his generosity to the business around him.
Yep.
You know, who are my favorite wrestlers of all time? They're all people who owe a massive debt to Dusty.
And it's
Bret
making me
Hart.
cry because he
Yeah.
was that such good of a mentor, and that's why I put him over Brock and not over Randy.
Mm-hmm. No, and yeah,
It's
and I know we
crazy.
joke about polka dots, but think about that. He was so likable. They gave him a polka dot trash bag to wear, and he was still one of the biggest stars within a month.
He's one of the best faces of all time.
Yep.
But I saved one of the best for last. He has had a really bad beginning start to his career, but what he's bringing to this company and the future of wrestling. Where are we putting Mr. Whoa? Mr. Cody Rhodes, who has whoa in literally every single theme song he has had besides Stardust.
I think you need to handle this first.
Me?
Yeah, tell me your. Give us
This?
an explanation, Cody.
So, for me, I'm thinking between World Champ and IC, but why I'm putting him in World Champ is because what I'm thinking with what he's going to do with his career, say he passes it on to whoever it would be next, whoever comes to the company in the near future, and whoever he's passing the torch to, he's going to do literally what his father did. He's going to be the person that helps people out. He's going to be the one to train people. He's going to try and be what his dad was. He's not probably going to be as good as his dad was, but he's just going to make the company so much better and make the product so much likable. And he's just going to make WWE more than what it should be because of social media now, and that's why I would put him at world champ, and I'd put him probably after Edge
Hmm.
because he has so much to prove still.
Yep.
But what he's doing for the product right now is so great.
Hmm. I would argue that there's no one more important on the main roster right now than Cody. And the reason I say that is
Yep.
AEW exists because of Cody Rhodes.
It's just
And
crazy to think.
I know you can say Tony Khan, I know you can say Kenny Omega, and yes, absolutely, they all owe that title too. But
Yep.
Cody was the one who put the Elite really like on a new platform and set them in a direction in which they could succeed. And his match with Dustin was what really started to like get more eyes on AEW. That was their second pay-per-view ever. And here's the thing that I think really solidifies it. For the time Cody was there, you never heard a bad thing about AEW.
Mm-hmm.
Aftermath of AEW, of him leaving AEW, there were fights, and there were people who were unhappy, and there were people who outright said it wasn't like this when Cody was here. So that
Mm-hmm.
tells me Cody was not just an EVP in the way the Young Bucks were, but he was a locker room leader. He was that kind of peace broker. And I think it also says a lot. He goes to WWE, he's a huge shot in the arm, and he has the whole crowd behind him. He is a cut and dry white meat baby face.
Yep.
He is a good guy with no shades of gray. And
Nope.
yet, in 2024, people are cheering this guy. And it's because of how good he is and the magnetism he has.
And
He got that from Dusty.
and
That
look what he
magnet.
did with literally talking about Dusty and what Dusty did in his like just his wrestling career and what he proved at WrestleMania this year, which is kind of weird because I predicted most of WrestleMania what was gonna happen, which is crazy, wasn't it, Ron? That whole
Yeah, you got
story,
everything right.
it's crazy. The one
I
thing
think you predicted Undertaker showing up at some point. If I
yeah,
remember.
because I was looking at Twitter and I was just doing research and I was like, I don't really have no clue if Stone Cold we mentioned earlier was supposed to be there. No, so I was thinking literally the only other person that could be there is Undertaker. But when we heard that gong,
Yep.
I flipped, and then literally as soon as we heard the 1, 2, and then you heard third, and literally I went over to Ron. I was jumping, I was crying, I was just so happy because I knew a new era of wrestling was starting. Then everybody coming out to congratulate him. Chef's kiss, Papa H. It's just
Yep.
it's so good. He deserved it. He hopefully can keep this product keep going. Like people are saying that his title run right now is not that good, but let him face some of the legends that mentored him because those stories are gonna cook, and I fully believe that his title run's gonna get better. Same thing happened with Roman at the beginning of his title run during 2020. Like yeah, he was
Yep.
coming back from leukemia, but it was dry. But then look what happened. It took him a couple years to literally be the God mode and all of that names that you could call Roman during then. But that's why I'm putting Cody there. Is there any other thing that you want to change between the order of people in World Champ?
No, I think the order is good. Though I will say there's one wrestler not here who I wish was here, and it's Scott Hall. And I think he would also be world champ because even though he was never a world champ,
Yep.
without him, there's no NWO.
And I'd put him right, probably, I'd literally put him probably right behind Cody.
Yep. But yeah, I think the order makes sense throughout.
Yeah. Well, Ron, this was literally longer than our podcast, which is crazy, but we had to deep dive into each person. They've all meant a lot to us. My goats are here, and I've explained why I like certain things. Ron did the same, which thank you so much, Ron, for doing everything, hopping on. I love talking wrestling with you, and I want to get interested more in on what he does. He does a lot of Transformer history videos, or even just reviews of certain like figures or whatever. I'm gonna put a link in the description below for you guys to go to his channel, check it out. I know I'm just wrestling and NFL content, but if you guys like toys like Transformers or what other stuff do you do, Ron? I'll let you have a shameless plug.
No, you've summed it up pretty well. I do a lot of Transformer stuff. I do a lot of toy history things. My big show is the Mini Toys of, which is I take a character and show like every toy that character's ever had. But it's a lot of fun. It's a very different kind of thing than what we're doing here.
Exactly.
But if you're interested, come check it out. I do
Yeah.
wrestling, but not often.
Yeah, no, that's more of me, and starting to do edits. Let me know what you guys think, but yeah, please go head over to his channel. It's great content. It's greatly thought of, and wrestling literally connected us too. So that's why I wanted to do one of these kind of videos, and we'll come out eventually with more wrestling stuff, or even just if you guys do want to listen to something with us talking more about wrestling or just life in general, we do have a podcast. I can link that down below for the episode that we did on my podcast. But I appreciate every single one of you guys listening in. Let me know if you guys came in this far. What should be the key word for people who have listened through the whole video?
Banana hammock.
Banana hammock. Okay. All right. Banana hammock. If you guys have watched this far in the video, please comment banana hammock. And I thank you guys for listening and tuning in. Please check out his links in the description below. And I have mine as well. But thank you guys for tuning in. And we're coming out with new wrestling content, hopefully eventually soon. More reaction videos or whatever. But thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you guys later. Peace out.